All right, guys. So, kind of continuing on with the little bit of pivot in my content, focusing around owner operators with the COVID-19 effect. Flip this a little bit here, and I brought on Adam Brown, and he is the founder and CEO of Sircle Media, which is I don't want to say it's completely focused on CPG, but you do have a lot of clients that I know very well, but you do work with a lot of other ones. But social media strategy, content creation, agency, do a little bit of everything full scale there, and have some of the most unique, detail oriented, like really cool images that I've seen lately. Like the stuff that you post, that you and your team make, I'm always like, man, that just catches my eye like crazy. So I'm
Thanks.
going to turn this over to you, Adam. Maybe you can explain a little bit about what you guys do, about yourself, for my audience, and we can kind of dive into maybe how your business has changed over the last couple of weeks.
Absolutely. Well, first, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And as I was saying before, I'm flattered if anyone wants to actually speak to me. And hopefully, at least a couple of people not related to me will listen to this. And so I appreciate all that. So, yeah, I'm Adam Brown. I founded a social media strategy firm in New York City in 2012. And I was basically solving for every brand needs a social media manager. That's the original thesis, and it's only gotten stronger, fast forward to now. And it's a full-time job, and it's probably a full-time job of multiple salaries. There's just a lot of disciplines that are needed to do this well. And most brands just can't fund that internally, nor should they. It's a lot of staff, it's a lot of overhead. So we solve for outsourced social media management as our primary product. So imagine instead of hiring Jane Doe in your office, you hire Jane Doe who works for me, and other than sitting in my office and having a Circle email address, she works for you.
Mm.
So that's a lion's share of what we do. What we also learned a couple years ago was there were quite a few brands who already had their version of a Jane Doe, and they wanted to keep that person, or just felt that it needed to be somebody internal, right? A lot of early stage brands feel that way. So what we also provide is outsourced content creation. So instead of now also hiring a full blown creative shop or creative team internally, you can have a creative shop like ours that solves for the different social media needs. And I really appreciate your compliment on our creative. I think, look, a lot of creative shops out there are overpriced and they don't really want to do like the Instagram post for Tuesday. So we think that's some mission critical communication. And so we really focus in on, like, we like to do that stuff. And so we can be very fast, very nimble. And because we're not a creative shop only, because we know social media and we have social media chops, we just bring a different lens. Like, we know what will work or what might perform or what customers like. And so it yields better content for the clients that we work with.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good distinction because there's an element of, quantity and quality, but there's a blending of both. It doesn't need to be quantity doesn't mean it's bad, and quality shouldn't mean that it kind of gets so overblown from a budget standpoint that you can't create 25 images for the client for a month and it blows out their budget. Because I mean, social media is all about keeping that story kind of going, and they might have some different aspects they can use with user generated content or whatever, but there's still, for you, it's how do you define that brand for the client in a way through imagery or video or whatever it is to make sure that it stays like a consistent story through their feed, because there's so many messages that happen throughout the day with just different brands trying to get your attention, and you need to have something that stops you when you're scrolling. And I've found like a lot of what you guys do, uses of color and different depths and textures and things like in your photos, like I've always found that it makes me stop and I'm like, this works. But I think that gets understated because people don't know maybe what goes into it, or they don't know how much maybe goes into it. And you guys have been able to like kind of master it at scale to be quick enough that it makes sense from like a budget perspective.
Totally. And, it goes into my whole ethos of everything I just said. Like, we don't, you need content. You're going to need photos, videos, and graphics. They're going to need to ebb and flow, some based on data, some based on gut. It's a mix of both. And, most creative shops are priced to do a project, a photo shoot once a quarter. They give you a certain amount of assets. they're overpriced and you feel like you have to use them gingerly. And that's not really built for social, right? And we're going to talk a lot about the current pandemic situation that we're in. Case in point, you need to be able to pivot quickly, maybe change all of your creative. And so if you're remanded to what you shot in January, and those are your only assets, a couple spirit brands I spoke to this week have beautiful photo shoots of all these attractive people running around on beaches.
Yeah.
And it's pretty tone deaf for the Times to be posting that content, yet that's all they have and they can't afford to do anything else. And that's a really dangerous position to put yourself in. And you said earlier about CPG. I made a decision, which has proven to be a really good one, given the times that we're in, to really focus exclusively on better for you CPG and beverage and spirits. These are just things that I like to consume, things that I can get behind. I'm a pretty good salesman, but I can only sell something I believe in, and these are the types of businesses I like to get behind and I can believe in. And in those businesses, it's a very crowded category, all three. A lot of storytelling. Why is your baby the cutest? How should it differentiate? And a lot of that comes down to effective assets and content that can help you stand out from the clutter. So it's a great observation, and that's where we focus.
There's some really strong brands that have posted some things that I have kind of questioned, that it's went through the right filter. And I think that a lot of the world has completely like changed on a dime. Like you think about, even you're in New York City, like with like Jimmy Fallon and like the Tonight Show, like how quick they were able to change out the way that was shot into more of like this home video YouTube vibe. And like that spoke to people. Like for him to continue on with the show in this nice studio and all this kind of stuff just doesn't work in this today's world. And with CPG, social media, or any social media, any brands or whatever, if you're posting things like, out on the beaches, or you're posting things in a big crowds or anything, people might not understand that was taken like previously. They might honestly think that you're just bucking the rules and just doing your own thing. Like, I don't know if people are even connect the dots with like the 6-second attention span. So you have to really be conscious of like what you're posting and make sure that it is relevant, I guess, socially relevant to what's happening right now, but also can it be on brand as well in a way that kind of makes sense. So what you were mentioning about how quick you need to pivot, it's like the world pivoted so quick, like you also need to pivot just as quick, or you're going to be sitting there with nothing to post.
Totally.
On the side of the business, like your side with your agency, like what have you seen from like the COVID-19 type of situation? Obviously, being in New York City, I'm assuming your staff is remote at this point, but has that been a big hurdle, or have you guys been able to adapt? Like, what have you been doing on your side to like keep the machine going?
Yeah, so anyone on the planet that says they're not affected is crazy and lying to themselves or to whoever they're talking to. So we're definitely all affected. Fortunately, our business, because of the CPG beverage and spirit focus, knock on wood, most of our brands actually are in fairly good shape, certainly compared to other categories. And so most of the news and interaction with the clients is mostly actually good stuff, not dangerous, perilous, crazy bad stuff, which is very fortunate, but still nonetheless is a change. Specifically for our agency, we are in New York City, we are remote. Before even shelter in place, I think March 11th, we told everyone to stay home. So I wanted to get ahead of that. And we all year round work every Friday remote. And we've been doing that for 4 years. So the pivot to remote work was honestly not a big deal at all for us. Like we always work that way 20% of the time. So being able to do that now 100% of the time has been pretty smooth. The only potential area that I thought might be a concern were for our photographers. But what's really nice about everything we just talked about is a lot of them are shooting from home, and they're very talented, and they're shooting home type stuff, which is very relatable right now. So it's very fortunate, showing their pantry, showing their refrigerator, showing a setting of maybe making tea, getting ready for a virtual happy hour. So it's actually translated really nicely for us. As far as communication, I've just been doing what everyone else does. I'm a big communicator. You see me out there in public. I probably 2x that internally. So a lot of Zoom, a lot of calls, real heavy communication. And I really try to divide a little bit as best I can, church and state, with my number two, who runs all defense. So that's making sure everything already in stays okay. And then I try to work on offense and anything I can do. And for now, offense is a little bit compromised. There's not a lot of points to put on the board. So I think I'm doing a lot of what you're doing. I'm putting myself out there more. I'm speaking to more industry experts. This is my third interview this week. Just trying to get the word out there and see if I can add value, and then potentially add value to some brands who are maybe rethinking their strategy right now too.
This sounds a lot like the conversation I had with Aaron Hind at LifeAid. He was talking about just the communication, needing it internally, but also from an external standpoint, like getting out there and telling the story a little bit more, because not only was it helpful to his brand and the just the exposure of his brand, but also just to share information to the community, because he understood that kind of put the competition aside a little bit at this point and say, okay, how do we get all through this? And then when we're back on a strong footing, then we can compete. We can go back to being, strong competitors and do what we got to do. But like right now, you don't want your competitors to lose based around something that is totally not from a face-to-face competition. This is something like total external that like a lot of people could never have conceived in their life that this was going to happen. The second one was around, this might not be the best time to acquire customers, but it's definitely a time that you can lose some. So retention is probably extremely important. Have you guys ramped up the communication with those stakeholders to make sure that they get what they need and make sure that they have kind of over the information that you normally would share with them, just to make sure that you guys are kind of staying in contact?
Yeah, for sure. Right. So, immediately contacting all of our clients, seeing where they're at, and really understanding the business. Like our unique selling proposition, and I'm sure there's other agencies that say it, but we really believe it, is we're an employee of that company, right? So we immediately triage, we get on the phone, we want to know what kind of things they're thinking about. And I think the biggest thing is being fast, right? So we have clients that every week are pivoting on a dime. They're crushing on Amazon, and suddenly there's no more non-essential. Then Amazon's dead. They're building up their e-com, but then they realize like they need to pivot away from that and support Sprouts. So like you have to be able to like dip and move and serve and volley in that kind of an environment. And so now is not the time to do what I think a lot of agencies do when they have retainers, is hope and pray they don't get called and sit back and just hope everyone makes it. I am leaning 10x into surprise avoidance. I want to know what's what and where I can add value. And so heavy communication, almost to the point of being annoying, where they're like, look, Adam, we're good. We got other things to worry about. You're good. But like really doing that has been very key.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's obviously two responses to this. There's one where you could put your head into the sand and try to avoid everything. And then the other one is like jumping right into the fire with your clients and saying, all right, I don't know what you need, but I'm willing to do it and let's get it done. And both of us working, a lot with CPG brands, I think we're speaking from a point of, I guess, I don't want to say luck, but just like we're positioned in a space that is doing much better than a lot of other categories of commerce at this point. Has there been any, like in your kind of big collection of clients, have you seen some areas that maybe are a little bit softer, ones that have needed a little bit more attention, or is it all been kind of pretty similar of a pretty positive point right now?
I think the later the stage, the brand, the better. So if they're, it's if they were just about to get on some retail shelves, they probably lost it. If they were ready on Amazon crushing, they've done better. I think paid social is crushing right now across the board. So brands that were believers in it and have invested the dollars are doing better. So all of that comes with, they have revenue, they have nice run rates, they have confidence, and they're not, early startup or like, million in revenue type stage. Those guys have been more vulnerable, irrespective of like whether it's frozen or,
Yeah.
snack item. I think it's more like even humans, like people, like if you were cash strong going in, it could be good. If you're a cash weak going in and not like really set up, it could be bad. And I would say that's similar to what's happening with the brands in our portfolio.
I think people are defaulting to brands they maybe know and in placements that they are confident in. So they're not, complicating their life in the sense of, going to a specialty retailer or something. They're going to go to Walmart, or they're going to go to Target because they know they have the best chance of getting the most amount of items possible if they want to do, in store. And if they want to go online, then it's probably Amazon. And so if you're not really strong in those areas and you're not already in those placements, you're going to struggle. And I've had a few clients on my side that have had the planograms getting ready to switch over, and they're pushing those, out. And I totally understand where they're coming from, but you also have a lot of them building up inventory and a lot of things. So they're trying to pivot as well to try to figure out, okay, how do we sell through some extra inventory? And in a lot of cases, it's a blessing in disguise because the supply chains were a little bit interrupted. So they ended up having that extra supply, ends up, working out in the long run, but it does create a bunch of ripples. That's what's going on. And you made a mention around like the paid social. Are you kind of echoing a lot of what other people are seeing in terms of like the costs kind of going down on those items? Like a lot of the noise is getting washed out. The people that maybe were jumping in late to it, that were driving up prices, they've kind of washed out. So the strong are surviving and they're able to like actually drive their costs down a little bit more. Are you seeing that on your end?
1,000,000%. I mean, thought going into this year, an election year, that, Facebook, Instagram ads were going to go way up in price. And we've seen the opposite, right? Like not just the little brands, but the big brands have pulled out. So you have, what I love about the Facebook marketplace is it's a real marketplace. So a lot of people have pulled out dollars. So CPMs are way down. People are shopping at home and they're not spending money on other things. So they're buying more stuff. I just bought a ping pong table for my, I saw that Amazon list, top things sold. I saw a ping pong table. I'm like, I'll take a ping pong table, like, because I'm not going out to dinner and spending stuff and socially. So I think it's a really good opportunity. I think there's a lot of impulse buys. On the point of paid social, it's funny, like anyone that knows me, maybe you have something similar, although I think you're a little bit than I am, but like, everyone's like, oh, you're social media, so that's digital, so that's e-commerce, so you must be doing well. And I'm like, well, actually, social media is everything. E-commerce, Amazon, retail, it's communication, sales, retention, it's everything. And so every little brand is different, but every single brand that we work with is benefiting now from paid social. If that's retail velocity support, if that's e-commerce, even if that's Amazon off platform sending to platform, the going is good. The costs are low. So it's a really good time for paid social, in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that most, discovery of brands at this point is digital first. Though there's still some people that go through all the grocery aisles and they pick up, some new products, and that's how they spot things. But for the most part, people are going online. And now, because people can't go to the store or they're restricted from going to the store as much as they'd like, you're having even more of that behavioral pattern changing towards people discovering new items. So then as a brand, if you do have the opportunity and you have the creative and everything that matches up, and make sure that you can, do some real good things for your business to get some people into your funnel and get them to know who you are. It's one of those things where it might seem like it's the worst time to spend in those areas because, you're trying to extract costs out of you're trying to create as much liquidity as possible to be strong. But to your point, if you have things that are going to prove out to be pretty strong, you have the right creative, you have the right copy, you have the right, paid strategy, you have such a cleaner runway to be able to win right now than you would normally. Like the risk on that side is a little bit out. So it's kind of like a counter between like, what do you want more? Do you want cash or do you want the opportunity to get in front of customers? It's kind of that question that people have to run through their brain. What have you seen from brands? It might not even be ones that you work with, but have done really kind of creatively or uniquely. Like what are some like trends that came out of nowhere, or maybe just like an acceleration of things that you were like high-fiving and be like, wow, finally people are doing these things?
I think a return to community. So I'm a big believer in Facebook groups, using Shopify, personal messages for your first 100 consumers, 200 consumers. Like I've always been a big believer of that. In peacetime, those are incredibly useful in wartime. So, being able to harvest cell phone numbers and emails and data is really key. And brands that I like, Bombas Socks is a former client of mine. I worked with them for years and years ago. They just launched sweatpants. Very smart time to launch sweatpants.
Yeah.
And I just bought it. A, because I'm mostly in sweatpants these
Yeah.
days. And B, I'm a believer in their brand. I just want their brand to do well. So I got the email and I'm like, I'm just gonna buy this. Like I'm a buyer of the brand. I like local. There's some guilt factor now. If you want brands to win, I have a yoga studio that I go to in New York. They just sent an email. They're closed for good. Super sad. They just can't get out of it. I literally like went on Facebook, found my instructor, reached out to her, and I was like, hey, maybe I would do a virtual yoga class for like my team.
Yeah.
There's a sentiment, like you said before, of people that maybe don't have it, at least today, as bad as others, of like an obligation to help and give back. And so I think that way, and I think the brands that have really done well are the ones that have played on that in an authentic way. And you kind of can't fake it now. You kind of had to have a root of that before now, and then it really accelerates now, which I think will prove out positive short term and long term for those brands.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think mentioning around the community aspect and building that story, building that connection with customers is extremely important during, like you said, peacetime, but then it becomes essential during wartime when literally that's the equity that you're now trying to pull out a little bit now and saying, I built up this equity with all these customers. I want to, extract a little bit because I need to stay alive. And they're probably going to be more willing to help you because you've spent that time to build up that equity with them. And to your point around the local, gym, it's like there's certain people that impacted your life that you're like going to go above and beyond because they've, maybe it wasn't the gym that did it as like a corporate side, but like people, still do it from a personal side, will over invest in relationships. And because of that, when times are tough and you're in a position of help, it's kind of easy to lend that hand and say, what can I do to kind of help? Let's do some creative things because to your point, you might use her as a, an influencer of a brand. You might like, there's all these connections that you have that she probably had no idea at all, that you even had access to, but like now it's kind of going to pay off because she spent time to build in that relationship. One question I have before we're gonna jump off here is the use of like live. What are you thinking about it? Because it seems like every single person, brand or influencer or just even common people now all of a sudden have gotten comfortable using like live social media. And for whatever reason, it never really caught on. It didn't like, it was always there, but if you went on your Instagram, you didn't have 16 different circles that were on live, every time you get on.
Totally. Yeah, it's I saw a meme this morning that like everyone's on live and you're like tuning it out. Like now it's having almost the adverse effect. Look, people are at home. They have time. It's a document over create format, especially Instagram Live. You're sitting around, you see other people doing it, which tees you up. You're like, oh, that looks pretty easy, or that was easy. It's like, plug and play. I can do that too. And it's one of those things, once you do it once or twice, you're like, this is cake. I can easily do this and put out content, and it's about just being consistent with that. So I think that's going to be a winner that stays. I did a podcast this morning, my own podcast about IGTV. So IGTV has rolled out, there's not as much live, but they rolled out new updates this week. Smart, right? Like it's been a dud. Now people are going to do it. Longer form videos hot. TikTok is obviously super hot, especially with my kids. Having going back to what I said, being in a position right now as a brand where you're not panicking and freaking out, it's a great time to lean into live or IGTV or TikTok and flex your creative skills a little bit and have the time to do it because you're not running around in the rat race. And so that's why I think you've seen a big emergence in live. And what we're doing a little bit is that's been a creative pivot for us with influencers. So my thesis was, look, all these influencers that are always busy and overpriced, a lot of them who work at like Rumble or SoulCycle, they're all home. They can't do stuff. So what have we started sponsoring live workouts or live discussions about fitness and like to like 100% hit rate of them being interested, send the product to my house and either free or very inexpensive because they'll take what they can get. And so that's an opportunistic, hacky way to use live to a brand's advantage and maybe get an underpriced and then better value play from this environment.
Yeah, I love that. I've always, as a strategist, I'm agnostic to any path to gets me to the end solution. And people will be like, well, why are we spending money on this area or that area? And I always go, where are we getting the most value for the least amount of cost? Like, where's that metric going to be the best at? And to your point, you know, these influencers, they're used to maybe going and traveling or doing this or they're sitting at home. They're not doing what they're normally doing, and they're not able to do some of those brand deals or things that they would make money on. So it's how do you actually hack what's happening around you to actually benefit, in an authentic way. And I love that idea. I honestly think that I don't see it happening all that much. You see it every once in a while, but I think that maybe it's just people haven't seen it quick enough. So it's definitely that's probably one tip for people to, if they're listening to this, that's something to check out. Cause I honestly think that it's not being utilized as much as it could.
I'm glad you picked up on that, and that probably is the best nugget here. Not only is that there and are they available, but the big brands that are doing these big deals, Secret and Procter and Gamble and Unilever, like they're not spending. They got big things that they got to figure out. They're not overpaying, so the whole market has corrected, which benefits entrepreneurial, CPG, beverage, some spirit, all the brands I work with, the kind of brands I know that, from my experience with you, that you work with, like it can easily be a woe is me, oh my God, this is terrible situation. I totally get it, especially in certain verticals. But in this vertical, and to the people I think probably listening to this, very good opportunity. And to your point, value that is better and outperforms the cost. I'm a big buyer of that kind of stuff right now. That is the opportunity. And you said something before about like sitting on cash versus like taking up. It's just like investing in the stock market right now. If
Yeah.
you're young, everyone's saying now is the time to invest any dollars you can, right? So it's the same with brands. Like if you can, now is not the time to sit back and hold on cash. Like influencers are pennies on the dollar, paid social is pennies on the dollar, and everyone's open. The market's open for that kind of conversation. It would behoove brands to take advantage of that, and I feel like they will feel like they squandered an opportunity if they don't.
Well, Adam, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing some insights with my community. If people want to follow you or your work, where could they do that?
So I am at Sircle Media on all platforms and on LinkedIn, which is where I'm probably the most active. I think it's Adam J Brown 23, or if you just
Okay.
look up Adam Brown Sircle Media, you'll find me.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want to help support me, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up button on this video. If this is the first time you've been introduced to my videos, would love for you guys to be a part of my community by subscribing to my channel. I upload several videos just like this weekly. And if you guys want to connect further outside of this platform, I do include all of my social media links down below. I just want to thank you guys again for your time. Hopefully I gave you some value in return, and we'll see you guys on the next video.